And welcome to this podcast episode. I believe this is going to be episode pod 53. And we're going to talk about a question from Gina regarding watching TV in bed. We're going to ask a question from Brittany, who's real into health and a triathlete and other things, and how to get over kind of sleep anxiety. And we're going to talk about a question from Golem about can you lose the ability to sleep with kind of ongoing insomnia, OCD, and things like that. And then Justin, we're going to talk about what to do when you wake up in the middle of the night and you're kind of you really want to check what time it is. Yeah, that said, let's move on here. And let's go straight to, where are you? This email from Gina. And as always, nothing here is medical advice to anyone, just me sharing general thoughts and comments that I hope will be helpful to the person that wrote the comment or email and anyone else with a similar problem. All right, let's get into it. So 22 hours ago, Gina wrote the following. Daniel, I have been following your YouTube channel for a while. I want to thank you for all the help. Thank you for engaging here. Now, here is the question. She mentions that she might have more questions in the future, but here is the question for now. In the past, whether I was having insomnia or not, I used to always fall asleep in bed with a TV on. My TV is mounted on my bedroom wall. I would watch television comedies, nothing stressful like the news or action movies, with the sleep timer set to turn the TV off in 2 hours. When I began CBTI, I stopped using the television in bed. Looking back, though, it seems I did fall asleep a lot faster with the TV on because I could listen to that and it seemed to still my racing thoughts. Also, now that I'm implementing CBTI, I will sometimes watch TV in the living room until my sleep window begins, then get up and go to bed. But I'm beginning to start to nod off in front of the living room television and then having to get up and go to bed, waking up quite a bit in the process, thus taking a while still to get back to sleep when I'm finally in bed. I'm wondering if it's totally against the rules of CBTI to fall asleep this way in bed with the TV on and a sleep timer to turn the TV off at a given time. I'd like to go back to that, but because I've had success with the CBTI in other areas of sleeping, other than the time it takes to fall asleep, I don't want to do anything to disrupt the progress I've already made. Very, very good couple of questions here. And I want to say the following. I think, CBTI itself actually doesn't really say anything about watching TV or screens or things of that nature. However, some people that practice CBTI also include sleep hygiene. And part of sleep hygiene is all these kind of rules about what you should and should not do before you go to bed and how your bedroom should be designed or whatnot. It's these things like keep it cool, keep it dark, avoid sounds, don't eat too much before you go to bed, don't expose yourself to screens or light. And so that's not really part of CBT, that's sleep hygiene. And I've really lately come to view sleep hygiene as a big problem because you get the sense when you talk about sleep hygiene that you have to get everything right to be able to sleep. You have to do all these little things correct to sleep, which is actually just anxiety provoking because then you feel like, oh, I didn't sleep. Maybe I didn't do this right. Maybe I didn't do that right. Maybe I should change this or tweak this. When in reality, sleep is much simpler than that. It's simply a matter of do I have enough sleep drive? Do I need to sleep? Am I sleepy enough? Do I feel sleepy? And is there anything blocking that sleep drive? And that's kind of anxiety and stress. All these external things that sleep hygiene don't talk so much about really has no impact. Now, so I think I've completely left sleep hygiene now. I think it's much more a problem than a solution. And so I think it's perfectly fine to watch TV in bed. Guess what? Most people watch some Netflix or TV or something like that when they're in bed, and they have no problem sleeping at all. Studies have not shown that light has any impact on sleep at all. Definitely not any significant impact. So that kind of was general thing, but let's go into like some more detail here. And one thing I found, like, first of all, I'm super encouraged that you have found CBTI helpful. That's great. And I bet, like, if you didn't change anything, if you just did exactly what you're doing now, you would still get better and better. That's always good to know. But I think when you made that change of going from watching TV in bed with the timer on to like taking that outside to the living room, you in a way made like an accommodation to insomnia, not intentionally. You did everything that you're supposed to do, and I mean supposed to do, and what people tell you to do. But in a way, it is accommodating insomnia because you're not doing something that you actually enjoyed, so that you can sleep more. It's like a sleep effort. You're trying to produce more sleep, and that in a way gives insomnia power. It's like you're accepting that I can't do this thing that I enjoy now because I have to sleep, and sleep is important. That actually, insomnia takes a greater part of your life. Like you have kind of bargained with your insomnia, if you will. I don't think that's good at all. I think it's super important that you look forward to going to bed. And if you look forward to going to bed because you can lie in bed, it's nice and comfy, and you're watching a show, perfect. And I think even watching an action-packed show is totally fine, as long as it's not like emotionally really triggering and engaging. If there's a lot of action and noise, something like that, that's just distracting. That's probably good, so no problem at all with that. And felt there was one more thing to say here. No, I don't think so. And I think you say, I don't want to disrupt the products already made. Totally get that. And I think that if you just do if you watch TV like you did before with the timer on and you enjoy that, I think you're gonna have more progress. Keep in mind that whenever we make changes, we tend to monitor how this is working. So if you would decide, okay, tonight I'm actually going to go to bed and watch TV, then part of your brain might be going, well, is this really a good idea? Should I be doing this? What if I don't sleep? Maybe I should go out to the bedroom. Maybe I shouldn't do that. That can make you initially actually have more trouble sleeping just because you're self-monitoring. So for anything you try to sleep better, know that any change typically comes with some worsening of insomnia. But if you just keep going, then things fall into place again, and you stop self-monitoring so much. So really great question. And if anything else comes up, Gina, just email me again. And with that said, let's move on to another question from the title here is podcast listener question. And this came in 1 day ago. Hi, Daniel. Just found your podcast this week and I'm loving it. Thank you. I listened to the most recent podcast on personalities, and all of those personalities fit me. I'm going to put on my glasses here. And for those of you who didn't check that out, I can't remember the number. Maybe it was Insomnia Insight number 252 or 3. But I think it was a good one. It's about like what common personality traits kind of predispose us towards having insomnia, and what you should think about if you have one of these traits. And here we go. She says, I'm a type A, anxious health nut. So that's kind of like 3 things. I've been struggling with occasional insomnia for years, but it became much worse when my daughter was born 18 months ago. There was a lot of stressors that year, which included her having colic, me starting a new job, our family selling, buying a new home, and I signed up for an Ironman triathlon. Oh my gosh. That's amazing. All these made insomnia much more severe, to the point I was only sleeping an hour a night. I managed to improve quite a bit using many different strategies since then. I meditate, try to stay busy during the day, make time for relaxation. I went on therapy for a little while. I've been practicing good sleep hygiene. So now I sleep 7+ hours about 50% of the time. However, I'm still struggling with those setbacks. I'm starting to feel frustrated with myself that I'm still not fully recovered, and I have nights where I just can't sleep no matter what I do. I find myself going down the rabbit hole trying to find the next best supplement or medication to get me to sleep, but I'm realizing that hasn't been helpful at all. How do I shut up my mind off at night when all it wants to do is take any and all the supplements I have in the medicine cabinet? Also, my Ironman triathlon is next month, and I'm starting to have a lot of anxiety on how lack of sleep will affect my performance, or if I will be even able to finish. Do you have any tips on how to change these thought patterns in my brain? A lot of things here to talk about, Brittany. First of all, thank you for emailing me. I would say the following. Let's basically, there's a lot to talk about here. Meaning, I think I have made like a playlist, which I don't know if you can do that on a podcast. I have to explore that, but definitely on YouTube, there's a playlist now which I call Core Curriculum, and I think it's about 38 or 40 videos that I think are really like the core teachings that that are really important. So kind of going through that, you will learn a lot of the basics that I think all applies to you. But let's go over some things here. Typically, if you have like one of those personalities, like type A personality, you are anxious, you're kind of really into your health, that predisposes you towards insomnia. That's a P, one of the 3 Ps in the 3P model. But having a predisposition towards something doesn't really mean anything more than that you could develop it later on. But there's millions of people out there who are type A anxious health nuts and sleep great because there hasn't been any trigger for their insomnia. There hasn't been a precipitating event. Now, you say I've been struggling with occasional insomnia for years. Typical, like a lot of people have like on and off trouble sleeping, didn't really sleep great, but it was okay, it was manageable until something happened, right? The precipitating event. Your daughter was born, she had colics, you start a new job, you're selling, buying a house. You have those precipitating events, which also are not a culprit or a problem, meaning whenever somebody has a big thing going on, you get a child, you buy a house, you're kind of supposed to not sleep as good. If somebody told you, I lost my job today, but then they went on to, but then I slept great. That is not normal. That's a weird reaction. We're supposed to, when something happens in our life, we're supposed to be a little bit on edge, watch out, think about it, process it. Like that's a normal reaction to stress. But the 3rd P is the most important one, the perpetuating factors. So what happens here is that something happens, you have a couple of sleepless nights, and then you identify insomnia as a problem. You go, whoa, now I haven't slept for like 11 days or 4 days or 5, whatever it is. This is a real problem, and I got to do something about it. That's when the real problem begins, because then you're trying to figure out why you have insomnia. You're trying to solve it. You're trying all kinds of things to make it better. And all that just creates a lot of attention that goes through insomnia. Attention becomes preoccupation and worry and anxiety, and then you sleep even less, and then you want to try even more things, and then you sleep even less. That is kind of the cycle that creates chronic insomnia. Okay, so far just for educational purposes, but you can already see how these perpetuating factors are the problem, and the way to reverse those are to try to think less about sleep. Don't try to figure it out. Don't try to do things to make yourself sleep. Stay preoccupied. And you've already done a lot of things. Like you have been busy during the day. That's super important. And I believe that's a big reason why you've seen improvement. As we just talked about in the previous episode here, the sleep hygiene, it's not wrong to keep, your bedroom cool and dark and things like that, but don't believe that that's gonna make you sleep. It really has no impact on sleep. And in fact, trying to keep everything like perfect, like that is not good, because then you think, if I don't sleep, it's because it wasn't cool enough. It wasn't dark enough. There is something like that, So I would say pretty much relax. That sleep hygiene thing is really good. And yoga is great. Relaxation is great when done for the right purpose. Meaning, if you enjoy yoga for the sake of yoga, perfect. If you're doing it because you're hoping that will make you sleep, that's another sleep effort. That's something you do to try to produce sleep. Anything we do to try to produce sleep backfires, because it leads to preoccupation and worrying, and we're trying to self-monitor, like, oh, I've been doing yoga for like an hour and a half. Is it going to work? Am I going to sleep better? That's not good. So I'm struggling with setbacks. Well, here's where I felt like kind of going basic would be helpful. Like the most basic technique when it comes to CBTI is bedtime restriction. So you spend like, maybe 7 hours in bed. So which means like, get up at maybe 6, don't go to bed before 11. And that's helpful in so many ways. First of all, if you get up early and stay busy, you build a strong sleep drive. You really need to sleep at 11, all right? That's number one. Number two, you also start seeing that, you fall back asleep quicker, you fall asleep quicker, and that really starts building your sleep confidence. You're like, oh, wow, I can sleep, there's nothing wrong with me. That's super important with bedtime restriction. So, and then when you start doing that, you start building sleep confidence. And then when you have these setbacks, when you're like, okay, I slept good for 2 nights, but now I had a terrible night again, the important thing there is not to react. To just be like, that was kind of a hiccup. That wasn't I'm not going to react to it. I'm not going to try to do anything. I'm just going to keep moving forward with my bedtime restriction. I'm going to keep getting up at 6. I'm going to keep not getting up and not getting to bed before 11. So that is really the path. Just like create that, set it and forget it. Decide upon the earliest time, the time you're going to get up, and be consistent with that. And then don't go to bed more than, let's say, 7 hours or something like that before that time. And don't go to bed unless you feel sleepy. And then just keep going with that. So I think that is really, really important. How do I shut my mind off at night when all it wants to do is take any and all the supplements I have in the medicine cabinet? Well, first of all, that bedtime restriction I talked about and the basic CBTI, and like when you start doing that, there will be less need to shut your mind off, because you will actually be sleeping more. And now, a couple of important things here is like, we cannot control sleep, right? So not any human in the whole entire world can make themselves sleep or think themselves to sleep or do anything so they sleep. So anything you try to do to make sure that will kind of backfire, right? So when you have that racing mind in the middle of the night, you can't think yourself out of it. You have to do something. And that could be, you could take your computer and, watch some Netflix, right? I'm on this Netflix thing right now. I talk a lot about Netflix, but it could be anything. Or you could read, or you could, knit, or you could do some laundry, or you could, anything that keeps your mind away from its desire to sleep is helpful. And then when you kind of feel sleepy again, then you can go back to bed. And you can even stay in bed. You can stay in bed and do something that just keeps your mind off of sleep again, and that's helpful. And now, the Ironman question here. A couple of things. Same thing as I just said, like the night before a triathlon or a marathon or a big board meeting or presentation or whatever it is, there's nothing you can do that night to make sure that you get extra sleep. No. In fact, you should just do the same things you always should be doing, meaning look forward to going to bed, do something that you enjoy before you go to bed, and then you can't control sleep. So, but here's what you can do, is you can prove to yourself that sleep is not crucial to how you perform. Sleep obviously has an impact on how we perform physically and mentally, but it's far from everything. Oh, by the way, who was this? Somebody mentioned that lady, cancer survivor, who swam across the English Channel like a couple of times. She was awake for 40 some hours, just swimming and swimming and swimming. That shows us that we can do some pretty amazing thing on virtually no sleep. Now, that's a little bit abstract, but how can you, is there anything more practical to do here? Well, yes. You can actually, when you exercise, if you're swimming or biking or running, you could keep track of your results and how much you slept. By the way, I think avoiding a timer, clock, or a tracker is good. Just write down how much you felt like you slept and how well you did running and swimming and biking. And then you will see that there's definitely not 100% correlation between how much you sleep and how you perform. And we see that, whoa, I could run, I don't know, 6 minute miles or something like that. I can run really fast even if I slept hardly anything, then like that anxiety just like evaporates. Like you feel like, whoa, maybe I don't need that much sleep to do a great Ironman triathlon. And that is the key to reducing sleep anxiety and just sleeping better. So Brittany, thanks so much. Awesome questions here. Super appreciated. And with that said, same thing for you, Brittany. Any more questions that pop up, just send me an email. Now, let's move to a comment on episode pod 52. And it's from Golem. And I'm going to read it. Hello, doctor. I was recently browsing a number of older videos. I'm not sure if this video is the appropriate place for this comment, but since this was your more recent video, it would be more likely chance of seeing a response from you. Perfect place. Any place to comment is perfect. Anyway, I recently stumbled upon your videos on FFI and SFI, and I got me thinking about the nature of the mind and insomnia in general. And my question is, from your experience, have you ever heard of the brain ever losing its ability to fall asleep in any kind of permanent capacity from general forms of insomnia, anxiety, OCD tendencies, or does that only happen with physical degradation of the brain that comes from a degenerative disease or physical trauma? Basically, what I'm asking is, can the part of the brain that initiates sleep ever just malfunction on its own? I apologize if this is a silly or inappropriate question. Not at all. It's a great question. And it is such a great question because it is such a common one. One of the most common fears with insomnia is that you will permanently lose the ability to sleep, that you somehow, sleepless nights has caused this trauma or damage to the brain that then will lead to it not being able to produce any sleep. And that cannot happen, has never happened, and will not happen. And you're right, there are these like super exotic conditions like African sleeping disease, or what's called African trypanosomiasis or something like that, and these like prion diseases that can lead to an inability to sleep, but that is not associated with like an emotional component in my understanding. It's not like the people with those conditions are worried about their sleep or anxious. They just sleep less, and there's not that emotional reaction to it. So I think the most important here is to say that what I'm saying here is not that if you are not sleeping hardly at all, or you're sleeping like 1 hour a night, that is evidence that you must have some kind of structural damage. No, it is extremely common for people with plain old psychophysiological insomnia, which is like the most common type of insomnia, to estimate sleeping 0 hours per night or 1 hour per night. Very, very common. Again, not medical advice here. Anybody, if you're concerned about your health, anyone who hears this, you have to talk to your doctor. But the point here is that you cannot lose the ability to sleep from stress, anxiety, OCD. And if you're sleeping like virtually nothing at all, that almost always is because you have typical insomnia or paradoxical insomnia, where you kind of just like you estimate sleeping very little, but you actually sleep a little bit more than you think. So hope this helps, Golem. And if you have any follow-up questions, please post them on any video, because they pop up on my phone, so I see them wherever they're posted, really. And then finally, Justin. Here is a comment from Justin to also a comment on episode 52, episode pod 52. And here it is. Thanks, Daniel. I know I need to stop attaching so much value to the quantity of sleep I'm getting. You alluded to discussing what I should do when I wake up and have the anxious thoughts and urges to check the clock. But I don't think you really got into that, which is true, which is true. I assume you would say to resist the urge and remember how many times you've fallen back asleep in the past, or how okay you felt during the day, even though you're awake for a while during rest, etc. Feel free to correct me if I'm wrong or add any thoughts you have. Thanks again. And to give some context here, Justin initially wrote me an email which was centered around like how it would be difficult for him to resist that urge to check what time it is, because sometimes he would check his time and it was almost his alarm clock. He would feel good. Sometimes it was like, very, very early. He was like, oh my gosh, I've only slept so and so long. And as I'm reading this comment in detail here, you pretty much said it. Best thing to do is not check at all. And you said here, like, remember how many times you've fallen back asleep in the past, exactly, or how you felt okay during the day, even if you're awake for a long while. Yeah, those are really good things. And now, and then one more thing I want to add, which I think I already talked about in this episode too, was when you wake up and you don't know what time it is, and you kind of feel like, gosh, I want to check what time it is, then you have that sleep anxiety, right? You're thinking about sleep, you're worried that you're not going to sleep, etc. And you can't think yourself out of it typically. I mean, if you can stay in bed and kind of like think about, I usually fall asleep anyway, and you can think about something nice and soothing, and you kind of feel like, I'm kind of calming down, then you can just stay in bed. You're probably going to fall back asleep again, no problems. But if you're like, that urge is so strong, like, I want to check the time, I'm so annoyed, I'm frustrated, I want to know what it is, then if you can, the best thing to do is do something to shift your attention. And I remember, Justin, that you sleep during the day and you have like a sleep mask and you keep really dark in the room. So it's tricky, but I think something to do is try to get up and maybe read or listen to podcasts or something like that. I know that thought can provoke a lot of anxiety, because you may think, then I'm definitely not going to fall back asleep again. But oftentimes it is better. It is better to do something that shifts your attention so that you stop thinking about sleep and then you fall back asleep actually quicker. So that's kind of the only thing I wanted to add there. And was there anything more? No, I think that's it. But I think you pretty much said everything already. So, but this goes to anyone else. If I ever made a reply and I'm like, I actually did, this happens a lot actually. I realized that something myself, that I made a reply to somebody and I'm like, oh my gosh, I didn't actually answer the very question because I went on a tangent about something I get excited about. Then if that happens, like, please do like Justin, send me another email or write another comment. So I think this is going to be it for this week. Hope you'll have an amazing weekend, and I'll keep, I've started doing like these type of replies on Mondays and Thursdays, and today there was just a couple of questions, so I wanted to do this one. And so if you have questions over the weekend, I will reply to them on Monday, and that's it. Have a super nice weekend, and hope to have you back here next week. Okay, bye-bye.